Today in this video, we're going to be diving into Mechagon Workshop talking about the route, and I'm going to not only walk through the route, but also show footage side by side so you kind of see what I am talking about. So if you like this style of video, let me know. My plan is to do them for all the dungeons. Now, I want to say that Mechagon is a pretty linear dungeon. There isn't much you can skip. Now, there are options for Shroud skips and Warlock Gate tech, but for the most part, in your standard routes, you're probably just going to hold W and pull probably in the realm of 100 to 105% count. It's just going to happen if there's an accidental body pull or your hunter feels like pulling for you. It happens, but let's kind of walk through it. So starting off, and one of the bigger changes that we're seeing is that the first boss room actually now has 4 packs in it compared to what it previously had, which was just 1. So what I like to do at the start is I like to pull the first pack into the right-hand side. And the reason for this is because you don't want to pull too many of these bomb tonks. These bomb tonks do a spell called Detonate, which if it goes off, it does a lot of damage. There's 1 in this pull in the very first 3 pack. There's none to the right, and there's 3 to the left. So when you have 4 kicks that all have to be kind of coordinated in pug groups, having 4 kicks, it can go south pretty quickly. So what I like to do is I try to always keep the Detonate cast under 3. Next, you can pull either one, but what I'll generally do is I'll go to then the left side of the room or the south end, and then we'll pull the one that's in front of boss. In order to spawn the boss, you need to clear the entire room. So clear it in whichever order you can. If you are comfortable with your group and want to double things up, you definitely can. The other things you want to just be keeping an eye out for is the spider tonks or strider tonks. They leap at random party members, and the rocket tonks are the ones that are causing all those swirls to spawn. Once the boss is defeated, you'll actually then be heading down into the underjunk, as they call it. This is basically the Cujo area leading up to the second boss. And most of the time, you're probably going to be holding W in here. Now, the first thing you're going to end up pulling is a waste processing unit. Now, I personally like to pull this by itself because it will dictate the pull cadence going forward. But if you want to pull this into the next pack, you definitely can. Tanks, you need to pay attention to their puncture cast or something similar. It applies a nasty bleed, and it does really high group damage. Now, this generally isn't an issue if your healer is strong, except there's also Metal Gunk. Metal Gunk is a mob that'll actually apply a healing absorb to your party. Now, luckily, this can be line of sighted, so your group, if they're paying attention, can line of sight during the cast. You can also CC it, but eventually you might want to line of sight because eventually diminishing returns will kick in. And if you just line of sight it, then you don't have to worry about CCing it. So you can kind of pull this area however you want. What some groups do is they pull the first kind of like 3 packs here, and then you basically only ever pull 1 drill at a time, or the waste processing unit, just because it's high AoE damage and it's high group damage, and it's a big tank buster. So the pull after the first one, you're then going to pull all the way down to like the larger pool of water. There's a patrolling waste processing unit, and you're going to ideally want to skip this. It just gives too much percent for you to reasonably actually want to play with it. And then you're going to pull the last Metal Gunk pack, and then you can pull in some of the Junkyard Dogs if you'd like. Now, these Junkyard Dogs are probably something if you played back in BFA, you probably don't remember being here, and that's correct. They are new mobs that were added. Well, they're not new. They were in the game, but there's only ever 1 of them. There's now like 10. Basically, you need to clear a good bit of Cujo's room to actually have space to work with. What I recommend doing is pulling no more than 3 dogs at a time. They apply a nasty dot to your group members. This can obviously be dispelled by healers. It can also be removed with dwarf racials. It can also be removed with diffuse magic. It can be removed with imp dispel, mass dispel. There's a lot of different ways to remove it. Basically, I like to try to clear the majority of this room, or at least this front half, and then you'll pull the boss back to this section. The other option is you can also just pull this last Junkyard Dog in, then you have the majority of the room to work with. Just be careful of these 3 dogs in the corner. You can pull them, but you're already going to be over percent, so I don't recommend it. So next we then pull Cujo, and once we're done with Cujo, you can head up to the next area by walking up the conveyor belt. Now, the conveyor belt can be skipped by monk players. You can roll and dash across and then climb up the little pipe. Warlocks, You can also just Warlock Gate for your group. Some classes can also do like interesting disengage stuff, but Warlock Gate tends to be the best way to do this. Now, this next part is extremely gated in terms of how quickly you can go through it. It's basically a 3-phase gauntlet. First, you're going to have 2 Mechagon Tinkerers and 2 Guard Dogs. The Tinkerers, you definitely want to kick their Giga Wall upcast, and they spawn these random like anti-personnel squirrels. They will run down a party member, and once they get into melee range of said party member, they'll begin casting their kind of giant explosion. Players will want to dodge this. Back in the day, you used to be able to just stun this cast and it would cancel. You can no longer do that. So just make sure you're dodging that. The next pull after that is going to be 3 defense bots, 2 Mark 1s, and 1 Mark 3. You want to focus down one of the Mark 1s because they do this thing called Arcing Zap and Short Out, which applies a lot of pressure to your healer and to your very specific targeted DPS. The Defense Bot 3 just does kind of the same thing, but definitely you want to focus on the Mark 1s because they have smaller health pool. Eliminate them a little bit quicker. Next, you have the Blastotron X80. This is the giant spider tank. He cannot be moved anymore. He is in a set static position, so you're just going to have to work with it. The strategy back in the day was to like pull him far away to the wall, and your ranged DPS could outrange him. That's not really any longer the case. Just play in melee and focus on dodging. They made the telegraphs, though, extremely easy, so it should be not too bad of a time. Next, we have the little gauntlet of running through the robots. Some players are very quick at this. Some classes and players are not so much. Having a Warlock is also really nice in here. If you can get your Warlock through, plus 2 more players, you can always summon people who are stuck, but just get through this as fast as you can. If you end up having to wait on a DPS, you're probably better off just doing the next trash pull as long as it's not too deadly for the tank, because it's not worth waiting. The next pack, the only thing you're really trying to focus down are the Tinkerers in this pull, and then you want to make sure you're kicking things like the Mechanics who are doing tune-up. They're healing basically the defense bots, which you don't want. On top of that, the Defender spawns a barrier. Now, this is noteworthy because any player or mob standing in the shell gets a 75% damage reduction. This will be important later on, but like tanks and DPS players, you can stand in this. When there's a squirrel out and about to blow up, if you're standing in a 75% DR, you're probably going to live. I'm not sure at what key level where you probably still want to run out, but if you're inside of that shell, the chances of you dying is so tiny. So use that to your advantage. Next, we have the Head Machinist, obviously do this boss, and following that, you're going to have 2 Spider Tanks. Now, whether you double this up is up to you and how comfortable your healer is at being able to push out healing. I recommend only pulling one at a time now, mostly because their damage is now, it's unavoidable. So before, they would do Rocket Barrage, and what that would do is it would just, you could dodge it. Now you can't. It's set group damage that your healer has to heal through. And then you obviously have to dodge the Sonic Pulse Blast. These are a little bit easier to see now due to the new updated visual indicators. But if you happen to pull both of these at the same time, if you focus down the one at the top of the ramp here, this is the one that spawns the taxi that brings you to the next section. So if you are going to double it up, focus down the first one and it's going to save you a little bit of time on your timer. Following this, we have a couple more pulls. As you can see, we're already at 88% count, which is kind of high. I recommend pulling the 2 Defenders and the Tinkerer into both of these defense bots. The reason why is because the Defenders give you that defense barrier thing. I forgot what the name of it is. But if you can use those to your advantage, the defense bots do nothing. If you don't have Defenders, these defense bots are very lethal. But as you can see, just doing this pull by itself has already put us at 97.1% count. So unfortunately, we are going to go over route here, or over count, but there's not much you can do. You're holding W. You can't really skip. Now, if you have a Warlock, you can actually Warlock Gate skip up to the next pack. If you don't have a Warlock, you kind of have to hold W and you just have to play it out. Playing it out will put you at about 105% count. You're going to be at 100, actually way more than that. You're going to be at 103 off of this. And then you're going to be at 109 off of the final pack. There is a lot of count in this dungeon if you're not able to skip. Warlock Gate skip is very good here. The problem about Invis skipping or Rogue skipping past this pack is that these mobs up on the stairs or up on this ramp have Spectral Sight. So as you're making your way up, they'll see you and it'll pull this pack, which obviously turns into a shit show. So there are a couple of ways to like reduce the amount of trash you pull in here. You can drop some of these junkyard dogs, and this will bring you down to 104%, which is kind of nice. The problem with that though is then you have less room to work with in the boss room. Again, it's not a problem as long as your players are paying attention. Adding a junkyard dog into boss also isn't the end of the world. Just know that it does a little bit more damage on your group, which can be lethal in hierarchies. But that's pretty much it. That's the route. You'll handle the last boss, obviously, and then you're good to go. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it made sense. This route will be linked in the description below, and the rest of my routes can be found in my Discord server. So anyways, I hope you guys are all staying happy, healthy, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.